today I'm going to be doing a soft-spoken video. Some of you guys missed my old soft-spoken reading videos, so I know it's a little different for some of my new viewers, but I'm going to be doing that tonight. So tonight I'm just in bed and reading my current read. This is the third book in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. So I just want to quickly have a little disclaimer that if you haven't read this book yet and you're reading Sarah J. Maas' Throne of Glass, might not want to watch this video because I'm going to be reading it, so I may have spoilers for you. So just maybe click off the video for now. But if you aren't planning on reading this series or you already have, then I'm really happy to have you here. Okay, let's get started. So right now I'm on chapter 7. And since you guys are just watching this to relax and go to sleep, I don't really need to explain the book series or the plot to you. So just enjoy the little story and you can relax and hopefully get some rest. Okay. Selena woke before dawn with a pounding headache. It took one look at the mostly melted candle on her nightstand to know that her encounter in the tomb hadn't been some awful dream. Which meant that far beneath the room there was a talking door knocker, imbued with an ancient animation spell, and that Elena had yet again found a way to make her life infinitely more complicated. Selena groaned and buried her face in her pillow. She'd meant what she'd said last night. The world was beyond helping. Even if she'd seen firsthand just how dangerous things could become, how much worse it could be. And that person in the hall. She flipped on her back, and Fleetfoot poked her cheek with her wet nose. Idly stroking the dog's head, Selena stared up at the ceiling and the pale gray light seeping through the curtains. She didn't want to admit it, but Moore was right. She'd gone to the tomb just to have Elena deal with the creature in the hallway, to be reassured she wouldn't have to do anything. My plans, the king had said. And if Elena was warning her to uncover them, to find the source of his power, then they had to be bad. Worse than the slaves in Caligula and Andover. Worse than putting down more rebels. She watched the ceiling for another few moments until two things became clear. The first was that if she didn't uncover this threat, it might be a fatal mistake. Elena had just said she had to find it. She hadn't said anything about destroying it. Nothing about facing the king, which was a relief. And the second was that she needed to speak with Archer, to get closer and start figuring out a way to fake his death. Because if he truly was a part of this movement that knew what the king was up to, then together whatever clues, perhaps he could save her trouble of spying on the king and piecing together whatever clues she could find. But when she took that step toward approaching Archer, well, then everything would certainly become a lethal game. So Selena quickly bathed and then dressed in her finest, warmest clothes before calling for Kit. It was time for her to conveniently run, and Archer fled. Thanks to the snow from the night before, some poor souls had been conscripted and disheveling moved towards most fashionable districts. Businesses stayed open year-round, and despite the slick sidewalks and slushy cobblestone streets, the capital city was just as vibrant that afternoon as it was in the height of summer. Still, Selena wished it were summer, since the wet streak soaked the hem of her ice blue gown, and it was so cold that not even her white fur cloak could keep out the chill. As they walked down the crowded main avenue, she kept close to Cale. He had been pestering her again to let him help with Archer, and inviting him along today was the most harmless thing she could ever do to get him off her back. She'd insisted he wear normal clothes instead of his captain's uniform. To him, that meant showing up in a black tunic. Thankfully, no one paid them much heed, not when there were so many people, so many stores. Oh, how she adored this avenue, where all the fine things in the world were sold and bartered. Jewelry, hatters, clothers, confectioners, cobblers. Unsurprisingly, Cale just stomped right past every shop window, not even glancing at the delight displayed inside. As usual, there was a crowd outside the Willows, the tree court where she knew Archer was having his lunch. He seemed to dine here every day with a few other male courtiers. Of course, it had nothing to do with the fact that most of Rifthold's elite patrons also dined here. She grabbed Cale's arm as they drew near the tea court. "If you walk up looking like you're going to pummel someone," she coned, linking her elbow through his, "then you'll certainly know something is amiss. And again, do not say anything to him. Leave the talking and the charming to me." Cale raised his brows. "So I'm just here for decoration. Be grateful. I consider you a worthy accessory." He grumbled something under his breath that she was fairly certain she would not want to hear, but still slowed his pace to a rather elegant walk. Outside the arched stone and glass entrance to the tea court, fine carriages loitered in the street, people hopping in and out of them. They could have taken a carriage, should have taken a carriage, given how cold it was and the fact of her now sodden gown. But she'd foolishly wanted to walk, to see the city on the arm of the captain of the guard, even if he spent the entire time looking like a threat, lurking around every corner and down every alley. Come to think of it, a carriage probably would have made a better entrance too. Entry to the Willows required a hand to attain membership. Selena had taken her tea there several times while growing up, thanks to Arabin Hamill's name. She could still recall the clink of porcelain, the hushed gossip, the mint and green painted room, and the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked an exquisite garden. "We're not going in there," Cale said, and it wasn't exactly a question. She gave him a feline grin. "You aren't afraid of a bunch of stuffy old ladies and giggling young women, are you?" He glared at her, and she patted his arm. "Weren't you listening when I explained my plan? We're going to pretend that we're waiting for our table. So don't fret. You won't have to fight off all the mean little ladies clawing at you." "The next time you trained," he said as they eased through the throng of beautifully dressed women, "remind me to wallop you." An elderly woman turned to glare at him, and Selena gave her an apologetic and exasperated look as if to say, "Men." She then promptly dug her nails into Cale's thick winter tunic and hissed, "This is where you shut your mouth and pretend to be a woolly-headed bit of decoration. Should it be too hard for you?" His returning pinch told her that he was really going to make her sweat the next time they were in the training room. She grinned. After finding a spot just below the steps that led up the double doors, Selena glanced at her pocket watch. Archer had begun dining at 2, and usually the meal was over within 90 minutes, which meant he'd be leaving any second now. She made a good show of pretending to rummage through her small coin purse, and Cale mercifully kept quiet, observing the crowd around them, as if these fancy women might attack at any moment. A few minutes passed, and her gloved hands grew numb as people continued walking into and out of the day court so often that no one bothered to notice that they were the only ones who weren't about to go in. But then the front doors opened, and Selena caught a glimpse of bronze hair and a dazzling smile, and she moved. Kale played along with expert skill, escorting her up the steps, up until... Oomph, she cried, slamming into a broad-muscled shoulder. Kale even pulled her to him, a supporting hand on her back to keep her from toppling down the stairs. She looked through her lashes, and then a blink, 2 blinks. The exquisite face gaping at her broke into a grin. Lena? She'd planned to smile anyway, but then she heard his old pet name for her. Archer! She felt Kale stiffen slightly, but she didn't bother to glance at him. It was hard to look away from Archer, who had been and still was the most beautiful man she'd ever seen. Not handsome, beautiful. His skin glowed golden, even in the height of winter, and his green eyes, gods above and word save me. His mouth was a work of art too, all sensual lines and softness that begged to be explored. As if emerging from a daze, Archer suddenly shook his head. We should get off the steps, he said, extending a broad hand to gesture to the street below them. Unless you and your companion have a reservation? Oh, we're a few minutes early anyway, she said, letting go of Kale's arm to walk back onto the street. Archer followed beside her, giving a quick glance at his close, expertly tailored tunic and pants, knee-high boots, and a heavy cloak. None of it screamed well, but she could tell it was all expensive. Unlike some of the flashier and softer male courtesans, Archer's appeal had always been more ruggedly masculine. The broad muscled shoulders and powerful frame, the knowing smile, even his beautiful face radiated a sense of manliness that had her struggling to remember what she planned to say. Even Archer seemed to be searching for words as they faced each other on the street, a few steps away from the busy crowd. It's been a while, she said, smiling again. Kale remained a step away, utterly silent and unsmiling. Archer stuffed his hands into his pockets. I almost didn't recognize you. You were just a girl when I saw you last. You were gods above. You were 13, I think. She couldn't help herself. She looked up at him from beneath lowered lashes and purred. I'm not 13 anymore. Archer gave her a slow, sensual smile as he took her in from head to toe before saying, It would certainly seem that way. You filled out a bit more too, she said, returning the favor of surveying him. Archer grinned. Comes with the profession. He angled his head to the side, then flicked his magnificent eyes to Kale, who now stood with his arms crossed. She still remembered how adept Archer had been at taking in details. It was probably because part of the reason he'd been the top male courtesan in Riftwood, and a formidable opponent when Selena was raging at the Assassin's Keep. She glanced at Kale, who was too busy staring down at Archer to notice her attention. He knows everything, she told Archer. Some tension flowed out of Archer's shoulders, but the surprise and amusement were also wearing off, replaced by hesitant pity. How'd you get out? Archer asked carefully, still not mentioning anything about her profession or underwear despite her reassurance that Kale knew. I was let out by the king. I work for him now. Archer eyed Kale again, and then took a step toward the court scene. He's a friend, she said softly. Was it suspicion or fear in his eyes? And was it merely because she worked for a tyrant that the world feared, or because he'd actually turned rebel and had something to hide? She kept herself as casual as possible, as unthreatening and relaxed as anyone might be upon encountering an old friend. Archer asked, Does Arabin know you're back? That was the question she was not prepared for, or wanted to hear. She shrugged. He has eyes everywhere. I'd be surprised if he didn't know. Archer nodded solemnly. I'm sorry. I heard about Sam and about what happened at Farron's house that night. He shook his head, closing his eyes. I'm just sorry. Even though her heart twisted at his words, she nodded. Thank you. She put a hand on Kale's arm, suddenly needing just to touch him, just to make sure he was there. Needing to stop talking about this. She sighed, pretended to look in the glass doors at the top of the stairs. We should go inside, she lied. She gave Archer a smile. I know I was a miserable little brat when you trained at the Keep, but do you want to have dinner with me tomorrow? I have the night off. You certainly had your moments back then, Archer returned, the smile and sketched a bow. We'll have to move some appointments around, but I'd be delighted. He reached into his cloak and pulled out a cream-colored card engraved with his name and address. Just send word about where and when, and I'll be there. Selena had been quiet since Archer left, and Kale hadn't tried to initiate conversation with her, even though he was near bursting to say something. He didn't even know where to start. During the whole exchange, all he'd really been able to think about was how much he wanted to slam Archer's pretty face against the stone building. Kale wasn't a fool. He knew some of her smiles and blushing hadn't been acted. And though he had no claim on her, though making a claim would be the stupidest thing he could ever do, the thought of her being susceptible to Archer's charms made him want to have a little chat with the courtesy. Rather than head back to the castle, she began walking through the wealthy district in the heart of the city, her steps unhurried. After nearly 30 minutes of silence, Kale figured he'd cool his temper enough to be civil. Lena? He demanded. Slightly civil, at least. The gold streaks in her turquoise eyes were bright in the afternoon sun. Of all the things we said back there, that is what bothered you the most? It did. Were to keep him, it bothered the hell out of him. When you said you knew him, I didn't realize you meant that well. He felt the strange sudden temper that was honing itself again. Even if she'd been charmed by his looks, she was going to kill Archer, he had to remind himself. My history with Archer will allow me to get him to provide information about whatever this rebel movement is, she said, looking up at the fine houses they passed. The residential streets were tranquil, despite the bustling city center only a few blocks down. He's one of the few people who actually likes me, you know. Or he did years ago. It shouldn't be too hard to get some inkling of what this group might be planning against the king, or who some of the other members may be. Part of him, he knew, should be ashamed for finding some relief in the fact that she was going to kill him. He was a better man than that, and he certainly wasn't the territorial type. And the gods knew he had no claim on her. He'd seen the look on her face when Archer had mentioned Sam. He'd heard of Sam Cortland's death in passing. He'd never known that Selena and Sam had crossed paths, that Selena had ever loved that fiercely. On the night she was captured, she hadn't been out to collect gold coin for a contract. No. She'd gone into that house to get revenge for some sort of loss he couldn't begin to imagine. They walked down the street, her side nearly pressed against his. He fought against the urge to lean into her, to tug her in closer. Kale, she said after a few minutes. You know I absolutely hate it when he calls me Lena, don't you? A smile tugged at his tips, along with a flicker of relief. So the next time I want to piss you off, don't even think about it. His smile spread, and the flicker of relief turned into something that punched him in the gut when she smiled back. And that concludes chapter 7. So, let me know if you guys enjoyed the soft spoken reading. And let me know if you'd like me to do more soft spoken reading. And yeah, I hope you guys liked this video. Let me know what you thought down below. Thanks for watching. Bye.